listener outside uni.
Okay, awesome.
Sweet. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our last industry guest talk. Our guest today is Kate Xagoraris, and Kate is a VFX artist in the motion picture industry in Canada. She has graduated with a degree in 3D animation and studied in Toronto. She primarily works with Houdini. She's a fantastic Houdini artist. Actually, I got to know her through her blog. She has a fantastic blog that she explains the VFX procedures in intricate details and like with her insight onto it, which is fantastic. I strongly recommend to everyone to read it. It's katexagoraris.com, and over there you can find a link says VFX help. Don't miss that one. It's lovely. She's a Houdini artist, and in her spare time, she runs this blog, incorporating ideas in VFX and in general in Houdini. She has worked as a teacher and a mentor and CG Spectrum and Houdini School in Los Angeles, California. So she's doing teaching, and she's an academic person at the same time. She has presented at Houdini user group events and promoted the benefits of scientific knowledge in visual effects. If you are a Houdini artist and you want to learn Houdini, you definitely has come across to Kate's tutorials on Side Effects website. So she's very generous with her knowledge and gives away like what she knows to the industry and to the artists out there. So she has worked on some very prestigious projects like Umbrella Academy, The Boys, and shows like this, and movies like Chaos Walking and Bad Boys for Life. Before heading into visual effects, Kate worked in the animation industry. She has also participated in animation while working in live action shows. So she has a lot to say. We're going to listen to her. She has a brilliant story, and at the moment, she currently works as a VFX artist for Mr. X in Toronto. So I'll pass it to you, Kate. So I think you're a little bit out of focus if you just hold your hand in front of your camera. Oh, there you are, onto your face. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Now
okay, awesome. I will share window. So
you're gonna share your screen, right?
Yeah.
So it's the button. It's the button right on next to the lip. Oh, there you are. You found it.
There we go. Okay. So a little bit of an introduction to me, as you might have already known. So my name is Kate Xagoraris, and I'm primarily a VFX artist in Toronto, Canada. And I also work as a mentor and instructor for CG Spectrum and Houdini School. So some work we've been doing over there is developing the curriculums. So they are more physics or mathematics based, and it's been a really fun road doing that. I've been working in the VFX industry for, well, I guess 3 years now of this presentation, and I'm best known for my Houdini user group presentation for scientific visualization in Houdini, and as well as my site, katexagoraris.com, or more VFX help. On my site, I document the technology of the VFX industry, Houdini tips and tricks, VFX history, and scientific visualization. And as mentioned, I've worked on productions such as The Boys, Chaos Walking, Umbrella Academy, Bad Boys, just to name a few, and most recently Pinocchio, that will be coming out next year, hopefully.
Yay.
So a little bit about me. I never really wanted to go into visual effects. It was never the plan. I never dreamt I'd be here, and I never really wanted to work in the film industry. But here we are.
Accidental VFX artist, right?
Yeah. So my original career path was to work for the Canadian Space Agency. I really wanted to go into astrophysics, and I really wanted to go to university and get my degree in that. So I'm a little bit more of a nerd.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the space and science stuff originally started. It was kind of ingrained for me in the beginning, and I got to, as like a kid, my family would just leave me at university campus, McMaster University, if you've heard of it, over the summer, and students there, they had this program where they take smaller children and they lead them around nuclear reactors and teach them about science. And that's kind of what I did for about 12 years of my life, which was really, really fun. Highly recommend touring a particle accelerator if you get the chance. It's very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I highly recommend you do a particle accelerator.
Yeah, there's certain, and then most universities have, if they're very into medical technology, usually have a low energy one on campus. So that's something interesting that you can learn about. But I was really lucky in that sense where like I grew up around universities that had access to these things. So with this in the back of my mind, when I was in high school and starting out, I also, I'm going a little bit too far here. I really discovered that I had a passion for art and I really wanted to head down the road into 3D animation. So, and that kind of whole interest was inspired by a show called Gravity Falls. Maybe you've heard of it. That show primarily made me want to head down the road into animation. So I ended up at Humber College in Toronto, taking their 3-year diploma program. And I discovered while I was studying 3D animation that I really didn't like animation. I hated being an animator, and I really didn't like modeling, and I didn't like rigging, and I didn't like anything else.
That's a big discovery, yeah.
And I didn't like anything besides texturing. So I was primarily, and I kind of like comp, so I was a little bit weirded out. I was like, what do texturing and compositing have in common? I see nothing. So when it came down to our final year in this program, I was kind of at a loss of what to do because that final year was to put together our portfolio and also just kind of come to terms with what we wanted to do with for the rest of our lives. And I didn't really have like a really good moment where I was like, I want to do this. This is something I'm really good at, because there was really nothing I was good at. But it was by pure chance I went into VFX, because at the end of my second year of college, literally the last class in animation, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on around me. I had Unreal Engine open mid-animation class, so of course I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. And I was working on this little portal I had set up in Unreal Engine where I got these textures to spin around and make something cool. And the teacher, instead of getting mad at me that I wasn't doing the work, kind of just said, hey, if you like VFX, you'll love Houdini. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So he proceeded to show me a reel of a previous student that had gone into VFX. And he had shown me his reel, and I knew immediately this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And that kind of kick-started my journey down the road into VFX. So the cool thing about my program is that they had a thing that said, you have to prove to us that you should head down the road that you're going down into. So they said, by the time you come back from summer vacation, you should show us some work. So over the summer break, I dived into Houdini and just gave myself a crash course in it. And it was a 4-month-long battle of just trying to learn something I had never been taught, which was quite challenging. So then when I came back to school, I got green light to go down the road into VFX. And I ended up finishing my final demo reel in about 6 months. And I had a pretty decent mix of compositing and Houdini art on there. But the first place I got hired at was a studio called Snowball Studios. I got hired there as a lighting, rendering, and compositing artist for a preschooler animated show, which is on Netflix, called Alien TV. It was fun to work on, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and I felt pretty miserable. But after 4 months I believe 6 months after doing that job, I landed a Houdini position at a place called Soho VFX, and this is the place where I'd work on The Boys and Umbrella Academy. So Soho is very interesting, where it gave me my first actual real job of what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but it would also be the place that would kind of push me to inspire to start writing about scientific designs and VFX. Because at the time, I had started working on my blog, and the blog wasn't even a blog. It was just a place to store all the information that I had gathered while I was in college, and it worked out pretty well that way. And I didn't realize anybody was really paying attention at this point. I didn't expect anyone to. But when I was at Soho, there was a kind of a moment where I got seated under this big, giant poster of The Incredible Hulk, which is, I believe, the first movie they ever worked on, from 2008. And I stared at it every single day. And there was a moment when I was working on The Boys, I still remember this because it struck me very heavily, where I just kind of snapped and I stared at the poster and I go, how realistic was this movie? Because I've been staring at it for about 9 months now and I have no clue about it. So I started researching it, and I discovered, to my disappointment, that a character that's built around concepts of science so much, there was no science in the movie. So I started to look into how science and VFX could be combined. So Soho has that little magical click for me that made everything possible.
I thought you were going to say, I was looking at the poster every day, and then one day I got angry and turned into green.
That's another story.
That's a better reaction that you did. Yeah.
But basically what happened, so I started to document everything I was finding, and I started finding how we could improve this industry through science and also our shots. And I didn't post this information straight away to my blog because I had, my supervisor at the time had said, hey, Kate really likes tutorials. Maybe she should make tutorials for the studio. And I said, and I thought, oh, this is my chance to make something relevant for the studio. So I had all that information. I was compiling it for the studio, and then COVID hit. And so I ended up just not working at that studio anymore. And it kind of broke my heart in a lot of ways, but it also gave me the opportunity to post what I've been making online and take out anything that I didn't need or was studio relevant. And that's sort of what became the modern blog now. So it was just kind of good timing, I guess, or a good coincidence that COVID hit and got all the science stuff up there. So after this kind of little journey at Soho, I went to a company called which is now called Company 3 Animation. It was originally called Deluxe Animation or Stereo D Animation. They got bought out also during the pandemic, but they're a lovely studio to work at, and I highly recommended them. They really, really take care of their employees. So when I was at this company,
yeah.
They really do. We can get into them later, but they're just a beautiful company to work with, and they have a lot of cool projects. So things that we worked on there were like Marvel's What If, another production called Road of Vengeance, which hasn't, I believe, found a streaming service yet, but it's very interesting. We worked on a lot of really cool things there, and it was incredibly worthwhile to learn from that team. During this time, I also presented my first Houdini user group event, which was scientific visualization in Houdini, and we just kind of covered the basics of scientific visualization in the software and what it's being used for outside of visual effects, which was great because I don't think Side Effects had ever done a presentation like that before, so it was also very hard to sit down and plan out because there were no references of it online or anything like that online. So in 2 weeks we had to put this all together and then showcase it online, which is fantastic. In fact, a fantastic experience. But then directly after that, I headed over to Mr. X in Toronto. So Mr. X has some wonderful projects going on. I can't really talk about them right now, but you will find out at least about one of them in December. That's your big hint.
Yay.
That particular December project was wonderful to work on, and I was blown over the moon by it. So hopefully it turns out amazing. And also during this time, Mr. X, I presented another Houdini Hug event, which was about abstract hydrodynamics in Houdini, where me and my friend David tried to build planetary atmospheres in the software. It didn't turn out the way we intended, but we got a good setup that I think anybody can use it to generate a result, which is great. And then during that time, I also got hired at CG Spectrum to work as a teacher there and a mentor. And that has also been really fun, and it's given me a lot of insight to especially how teaching works, and also how online teaching is very different from in school teaching. There's a little bit more of a difference, and both of them are awesome in the same way. So let's move on to scientific kind of visualization and talk about where I kind of dive into this and how Houdini is being used in this field, and how VFX artists can impact it as well, because we have a huge impact not only on our field, which is the film industry or video games, but we also have a huge impact on the scientific industry. So anything that technology that gets developed from our side is probably used in fields like NASA or anything like that. One cool little quick bit before we get started into this section. NASA uses game engines on Mars rovers, and that's kind of how they plan out their controls and simulate them at the same time, because you can build a simulation in a real engine in real time and edit it. So little tidbit for you there, but it's kind of interesting like that.
Hold on there. NASA uses.
Yeah, well, NASA, I don't think. Wait, it's not. I know they use Unreal Engine for some simulations, like if you're at Kennedy Space Center. I believe they use Unity for the rovers that they program. So game engines are very important.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's wild. So
Yeah.
like pretty much the same tools that we use to make entertainment is used for such a highly crucial, accurate scientific simulation.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And I believe Houdini is also being used by NASA, and like even the Department of Defense in Canada uses Houdini, from what I've heard. There are several papers on it, so you can't really visually see what they're using it for because it's probably top secret. But they do use Houdini for, ammunition explosions and predicting of how they blow up. So there's a whole other side of using these softwares that we don't even know about, which I find very fascinating. So you can say that science is very important in VFX. So without scientific visualization, there's a good argument to say we wouldn't have the tools and softwares we have today. And another example of this is in a reverse sense to what I've just been talking about. There's been something called smooth particle hydrodynamics, which is a system that would later help create the flip systems that we know and love in Blender and also Houdini. And this technology was first developed in 1977. And it was first developed for astrophysical simulations. So for NASA, and specifically for the use of visualizing non-spherical stars in the universe. And another thing about Houdini, which is one of the reasons why it's so accurate and so favored to use on the science side, is that it was built with the idea of scientific visualization in mind. one of the co-founders of SideFX, Greg from Avaic, originally did scientific visualization for the Canadarm and for the Canadian Space Agency. So that's what he was doing before he created the software, and he worked with prisms. So he's a very smart guy in that sense. Houdini is also still being used to give back to NASA. It's currently been being used to visualize images from the Hubble Space Telescope and other departments. So there's tool sets that they've built around the software, which I find very fascinating. One is called the YT tool set. It's free to download, and I can add a link later. And it's
I
very
worked with
worthwhile.
Whitney. Yeah, I work with Whitney. It's fantastic. It was 2019. I presented a paper in SIGGRAPH in Brisbane, and they were there, and like a bunch of like nerd scientists. Like their study was on atmospheric systems and nuclear simulations and things, and they were. An airplane just passed by, and they were using Houdini for scientific simulations, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's insane, and they've
Sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, for sure. I was just gonna say, if you're working with the tool set, make sure you have a Mac or a Linux system, because Windows, it doesn't like Windows for some reason. Yeah, which is unfortunate, because demoing it or making tutorials for it, the majority of people who work in VFX have Windows, so it's a little bit of a kicker there, but it's worthwhile checking out either way. So again, this feeds into, is VFX a science? If we work with scientific visualization, is everything we do in the software a science? When you go into film, are you expected to make things physically accurate? And the answer is no. There's a little bit of a debate right now, which is more basically which is more important, obeying the laws of physics or producing like a shot that's artistically right. So this is something that bugs me when I go to work every day, but it's something that needs to be done because it's work. If you are ever working in the film industry, realism informs everything that we do. However, we do what we need to get a shot done, and as well as what version and preference of the effect the client wants. So sometimes the client might say, and this is the most favorite story I've heard from my coworkers. I have a friend who was working on a project, and the client wanted a physically accurate underwater explosion. So they did that. They spent 6 months building a physically accurate underwater explosion. And then the client turned around and said, no, I don't like this. This is dumb. Do something else. So they had to do a very, very toned down version. Yeah. And they did a very minimalistic, very inaccurate version of an underwater explosion. And that's what the client likes. So that happens every day in visual effects. And so don't be mad if what you build isn't physically accurate and isn't realistic, because sometimes you do need to cheat in order to get the desired result. And that's just a sad part about the VFX film industry, because we'd love to make things physically accurate, but everything would be way more expensive that way for VFX. So as we covered, like Houdini is used a lot, especially at NASA, but here are some other fields that it's used in. So medical rendering, there's the Houdini medical toolset, which is available for free on GitHub. It has some really cool models of human skulls that you can work with. Houdini is also being used at planetariums. So California Academy of Arts and Sciences uses Houdini a lot for their scientific visualizations for their planetariums. They also use it in their marine biology research to map the oceans. They've had many different displays at SIGGRAPH using Houdini to map coral reef growth and everything like that. So I recommend checking out their visualization projects. Archaeology and paleontology. There are a few tool sets out there. They don't work as well as the YT tool set, but they do exist. There's a teacher who actually lives, I think, 2 blocks down from me, or at least works 2 blocks down from me where I'm located, at the University of Ryerson, who was one of the original interns at Side Effects. And he has gone on to be an archaeology professor at the University of Ryerson, and he uses Houdini to build models and map longhouses and other kind of research projects he works on. So it's really interesting to see what he does.
I'm just looking at these, the one that you just said, like Houdini for medical rendering. So there some mind-blowing tools here. I'm gonna use it for fun.
Yeah.
Wow. There's thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, there's a lot more out there than I think everyone realizes. Like even just researching for this presentation and some other things this week, I found some other cool Houdini science related topics or VFX topics that I didn't know about. So those will probably evolve into either future articles or a tutorial or something because they were so fascinating. So I'm hoping that these tools get created in the future, because I would say our community really needs them. So some advice, if you ever need to or ever want to put, I guess, science into your own projects, here's a little quick rundown of what you can do personally. So the best way to make your shots realistic and scientific is to get a better understanding of what you are trying to build. And the first type of thing you need to do is to break up your shots or projects and research what you're going to need. And this can be anywhere from how many simulations might I need in this scene, how many models I'll need. But then from that, you need to go, okay, so what am I building and how does it work? So you need to find pictures of what you need to build, videos, scientific papers, graphs, anything to give you a better understanding of why it looks the way it does. And then you have to build the project as straightforward as you can. And just keep it stupid simple. The more simple your first build is, the easier later on when you go back and you add things to it to make it more accurate. That process will become a lot easier. So don't overthink a build, and then break down what you're trying to attempt to build to its most basic parts. And it's easier to consider a bunch of smaller pieces than one big complex idea. So just keep that in mind. And especially if you're working in Houdini, you need to look for nodes that will simplify your process. Houdini has been wonderfully updated in the past couple of years, where Side Effects is moving towards a SOP-based workflow instead of having multiple VEX options and BOP options and DOPNets. So if you think that there's something in your project that can be replaced by a SOP, totally do it. It will simplify your process. And if you think it will maintain the accuracy of your build, then absolutely consider that as well. Because not everyone is a huge fan of using Python and VEX to create something in Houdini, but by the end of the day, you might have to do that. But consider which nodes that will simplify that process. Sometimes, if you're working on a project or a shot for work, you might have to balance the scientific accuracy of what you're building with visual appeal, like we've just talked about. Because sometimes scientific builds aren't that interesting. They may demonstrate something accurate and correctly, but they're not very pretty to look at. So you do need to consider that sometimes.
Yeah. How do you measure your scientific accuracy? Is there any way that you just like run through like kind of the scientific formula that is provided by the paper and see if that's what happens, or it's all visually? Because appeal is something you rightfully mention here. So
yeah.
which like I assume that it's just by referring to the visual references. Is there anywhere that you use non-visual references, like numbers and like data?
I'll answer both of those. So one thing you can kind of do with visual appeal, in scientific builds is that you can build around what you've just created. So let's say if you don't want to destroy the accuracy of whatever you've done, sometimes you can build around it, maybe with particle systems or use an emitter to make it more interesting. Or maybe in the texturing aspect or the lighting aspect, you can light it to make it a little bit more, give it the tone or mood to whatever you've built, a little bit more fun. But I personally, when I'm starting a scientific build or a build that needs to be somewhat accurate or is based off of science, I do look at visuals first, because I need to understand, okay, if I'm building, let's say, a nebula, visually the colors are going to tell me what type of gases are in that nebula, because different elements emit certain colors. And then I'll often look, let's say if it's a nebula, there's different photographs that could be taken of it. So whether that be in like an X-ray, infrared, anything like that. So the color tones might change depending on what is being registered in those photos and what different layers can be included in the build based on those different colors generated by different radiation frequencies. And then I go, okay, then I go to my reference, like a star chart or something, or any scientific information, let's say, about that nebula. So whether it's a scientific paper or articles about it, and say, okay, so it's X number of light years across, and if I was to scale that down Houdini to a manageable size, what would that look like while retaining the shape and everything? So that's kind of how I work. I haven't really built, the only thing I really build without looking at the visual representation are equations. So if I want to enter, let's say, an equation into like CHOPS or something to see the wavelength of an equation, then I won't really look at images of it. I'll just kind of, unless I want to say, okay, this is what it looks like on a graph. But other than that, I generally just kind of stick to what I've just said, where I look at the images first, bring up the data, and then I kind of work from there.
Nice.
Yeah. So here are some scientific plugins and scientific resources that you can check out if you have time. So Biocinematics is a great, and probably so far one of the only Houdini channels out there where he uses medical rendering in Houdini, and he teaches you what he's building. So I recommend checking that out. Catalina Borkwitz, she's the one who created the Houdini kind of astrophysical visualization toolset, or YT. So she has her own website, and it's worth checking out as well. Andy Thomas, I think, also works in scientific visualization. There's the astrogeology toolkit. It doesn't really work with Houdini, but it does work with other Python readers like Anaconda pretty well. Houdini medical toolset, like we just talked about. There are also different Stokes variational microsilver plugins for Houdini. So those are on GitHub. So if you wanted to create use different scientific solvers for Houdini, that exists. And my own site has a bunch of resources for you to check out. And there's also a scientific design and Houdini server. And I can drop the link later on and share it with your teacher. And it's just kind of a Discord server where we kind of just chill and we post scientific things related to VFX in it. And we help each other in it. So it's pretty useful.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
These are very precious, like kind of collection of links. Would you be able to share these ones later on with us, with our students?
For sure. For sure.
Perfect.
I'll send you an email with all the links.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So moving on to general industry advice, because I'd rather let you guys in on this now instead of waiting 5 years to figure this out, because I've made that mistake and I'd rather know what else they get. So I would say some advice is the following. So I would say as a junior, starting out in this industry, no matter what position you would like to be, it's always going to be hard to achieve. The hardest part is getting your foot in the door. So even if let's say you want to be a Houdini artist, you want to create simulations, and you want to do all the fancy things in film, sometimes you might not start out as that, and that's okay. I personally went through that journey of starting out as a lighting, rendering, compositing artist, and I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, but I continued to work on my demo reel, and then I got my next industry job, which is exactly what I wanted to do. There's no clear pathway in this industry. You can start anywhere, and you can end up as anything. So don't think that you're limiting yourself by accepting a job that you don't want to do. It's going to be a foot in the door to get you to a better place. And so,
very well said. Yeah, very well said.
Yeah. And the VFX industry is also pretty flexible, and there are a lot of options to switch departments as well. A lot of VFX and animation companies out there offer free mentorships and training so you can learn other skills in the office. One company I worked with called Stereo D, they had physical rooms, which weren't being used when I was there because of COVID, but physical kind of classrooms where they would sit people down from other companies that were associated with Stereo D, and they'd get them to teach a group of people lessons. So they say, how many people want to learn about color grading this week? And they would go sit in that classroom, and then somebody would give a lesson either virtually or in person in that classroom and teach them the basics of color grading, just as an example. So there's different studios that do that. So I highly recommend, if you get into a studio that offers these courses or classes, totally take advantage of them. They're really great things to have, and they will introduce you to a lot more people. The other thing I wanted to mention is that it's completely okay to start out in the animation industry and transition over to VFX or vice versa. Games. Animation is a lot more relaxed than visual effects, and it can be a good industry to build your confidence in. So don't consider yourself a lesser artist because you're working in animation or were not able to get your dream job straight away. Let's say if you wanted to work in games or VFX, but your first job was in animation, don't feel bad. You have your foot in the door. Keep working with what you have because it's going to get you there. And the other thing I want to mention as a junior, always ask questions. There will always be someone there to help you, and double checking of how to proceed in a particular shot saves you a lot of time. So always ask questions. And if you don't know how to do something, then that's okay. There's always someone who will help you. It's not like everyone's going to tell your boss, oh, Kevin couldn't do this thing that we asked him to do, so we have to take him off the shots. That won't happen. And if it happens, that's not the company you want to work for, because a good company will tell you how to grow and help you grow as an employee, and bad companies won't. So that's often a very telling sign of what type of company you're working for and how you can fit into your office space. And it doesn't hurt to learn about what other departments do in a studio. The more knowledge you have about how a production should run or what assets you might need will help you communicate to your coworkers better. For example, half my time in the studio is always talking to animation because I always need animation. And understanding of how they're animating the shots and how long it will take me to get those shots will usually determine of how I work on things throughout the day. So if I know that, let's say someone's working with roto animation and roto animation is needed on a shot I'm working on, roto animation is where they kind of have a plate of a character doing something and they roto around it, and then they create the animation based on the plate. So it's very, I would say a simple task because I'm not an animator. It's probably very hard to do. But I know if someone ever says to me, oh, roto animation is still being done, I know it's going to be ready tomorrow because it's a very quick task to do. Versus someone saying to me, oh, I need to animate a plane doing all these loopy-loops. So based on that information, I can coordinate in the back of my mind, okay, I need to do this shot first because the animation will be ready for that. I can't work on this yet. I can't work on that yet. So let's prioritize this one thing. So it really works out in your mind better when you understand how assets work. The other cool thing or advice about how you should know how production runs is that there's always at least not everyone in production on the production side will understand what's going on from an animation or VFX perspective because they've gone to school for something different. So don't feel bad and don't feel angry if you are talking to someone in production and they don't understand what you're doing. That's okay. They are here to help coordinate you through your tasks and get you the help you need. So that's kind of their job, to just coordinate things. And that's great. But also understanding what they're doing from your perspective can really help as well, because when you're talking to production, they have a schedule that they need to push shots out on. And so understanding their schedule can also help you coordinate your own schedule when you're working on shots as well. So that's always very beneficial. And the last thing I would say is don't give up if it takes you longer than your other classmates to find a job in the industry. So it sometimes takes a longer time, but there will always be someone who will remember you for your demo reel and will be always watching your progress on shots. I know someone in particular, it took her 2 years to find a modeling job in the animation industry. And even then, she only worked at that modeling job for 2 months. And then she discovered that she didn't like modeling, even though she had been training for it 2 years post-college. And she switched over to render angling, and she enjoys that better now. So there's always a different path that you'll be on, and that's totally okay. So some other cool things for demo reel-wise.
Here is very important for you guys. You are wrapping up your demo reels and soon will be submitting to different positions. So listen well.
So some demo reel advice. So try and come up with ideas for VFX creations or animation creations that have not been attempted, or make a recruiter think, oh, cool, I've never seen that before. Because often the first people reaching out to you, sometimes they'll be supervisors or leads from other companies. They'll say, oh, I saw your work on LinkedIn. That's really cool. Can you talk to me for a second? And sometimes that will happen, but usually artists themselves or VFX supervisors won't take time out of their day to be going through LinkedIn looking for new artists. Often it will be a recruiter on the production side or with an HR, and they'll be looking for artists. So they've probably seen a lot of similar demo reels, especially creations from popular tutorials. So stay away from putting those in your demo reel. Supervisors and also recruiters will be able to recognize which tutorial you've used. I've recognized this myself when I'm teaching. I think there's a very popular tutorial that I see in almost every demo reel. It's this liquid sim on a chocolate bar. I think it's from Stephen Kipling's tutorials, but it's used in everything. So if you're going to put a tutorial in your demo reel, change it up. Think about what you're building and think about what else it could be used for, and make it more original.
Stephen Nipping. Everyone, he's a fantastic educator, but because he's good at teaching what he's doing. Everyone is overusing his tutorials again and again. So don't be creative.
Another really good way to get yourself out there is to participate in Rebel Way challenges or other VFX and animation events. Rebel Way is a really good way to get noticed, even if you don't win, because pretty much any studio, once they know that you've participated and get put in your all into a Rebel Way challenge or something like that, and they can visually see what you've done by yourself under direction or working with pre-made assets, they'll probably go, oh, that's kind of like the light version of production experience. We want you in our studio. I
just posted the link to Rebel Way challenge page here, everybody. If you don't know what it is, I just posted the link there here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, I would say that one's a great example. There's 2 people I know personally who I work with who got hired directly from what the recruiter saw on LinkedIn from their Rebel Way challenge. Neither one of them won, and they were no way close to winning the challenge, but they were still noticed that way. So I would say it's definitely worthwhile checking out. And the last thing I would recommend is networking. So don't feel scared to promote your work. The worst thing you can do for yourself is be quiet in and outside the industry. Speaking up for yourself is always a good thing, and the same thing is said when you're promoting your own work. So don't feel bad if you. There's always a fear that on social media that you'll be judged for what you put out there. And yes, to some extent, people might judge your work, but by the end of the day, you're showing. It's great to come back to like the first piece of work you published or showcased and go, wow, I was terrible versus what you're doing now. But it's also really good to go back and see your old posts and say, oh, wow, look how much, maybe I wasn't so bad because I did get a lot of support on what I published. But yeah, don't ever think your work is terrible and that no one should see it. If you're proud of your own work, and you should let other people help be proud for you and showcase that. It's never a bad idea to showcase it. So tips for your first VFX and animation job. These are things I didn't know when I first went to the office for the first time or meeting all my coworkers. I was, to be honest, when I first started out in the VFX industry, I was very quiet. I didn't know what I was doing, so I just thought I'll be quiet. Someone will tell me what to do, which is not always the case. So when you're in the office, you don't really have to dress super formally. Just dress comfortably and respectfully, and just bring a jacket.
I love that tip, Frida. Don't go with suits in your first day.
Yeah, don't do that. So VFX studios are super cold because you need to so always bring a jacket. That's like something I learned the hard way, freezing my ass off.
Not in Auckland. Maybe in Toronto, but not
even in summer,
true.
Though.
Like because mostly studios are on open offices, so you got these massive open offices or like big buildings that they're cold.
Yeah. So the other thing I would recommend is to speak up when you feel uncomfortable or if you need help with anything. It's a quick way to learn fast and feel comfortable in your new workspace. One big thing that was big, this was very big for me when I first started out. I was happy to sit in a corner and say nothing because I was just taking in my new environment, and I was getting used to, reviews are 4 times a day and you have to have something in for those reviews, and everything was so overwhelming that I was quiet. But you should generally speak up whenever you need anything in the office, because you need to communicate when you can't get your work done, and you also need to communicate when you can. It's a good way to just keep everybody in the loop. Another great part about office culture is that there's always beer Fridays or Friday events that you can participate in, and some studios do. I know right now we have Taco Truck Fridays, so we have a taco truck that comes by the office. Other studios do variations of those
that's
things.
Cool.
Yeah. So as someone who's new to the office, participate in those things. You don't have to drink with anyone. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, but just stepping away from your computer is a good thing. You don't need to sit there and work, improve yourself, especially when there's an event going on. Be with your coworkers. It's a good way to socialize and, build up a confidence in the workplace. So I'd highly recommend participating in those things. The other thing I will mention is don't stay late unless you're getting paid overtime or unless you have to. If you can't finish a shot by staying later than usual, go home. You're not proving anything by staying there.
Yeah,
just go home.
True. Yeah. Take care of yourself and your mental health.
Yeah.
First.
Exactly. You come first as an artist, and so you always need to remember that. So yeah, always look after yourself first. My rule of thumb is that if I can't finish a shot by 7 p.m. and let's say the due date is on Monday, then I'll just go home. So if it's a Friday at 7 p.m., I can't finish the shot, I'll just go home. That's usually my latest cutoff. And that sounds really, you may, oh wow, getting out of work at 7 p.m., that's so late. Sometimes you do need to work overtime in the office, or the average work week will be a little bit different. So currently at the studio I work at, we work 44 hours a week. So that's 8.8 hours a day. So we do need at least stay till like 6:30. So 7 p.m. is usually a cutoff time for me where I go, I'm not working anymore. So usually creating your own cutoff time for yourself is also a really good habit to have. So yeah, don't also feel pressured to take on more work than you can handle or prove your place in the office. Your job isn't a competition with your other office coworkers. There's something called quantity versus quality. So if you want to do a lot of shots all at once, the quality might not be that great. And you might be asked to redo them over and over again. But if you're doing very few shots with a high quality of work around them, that can generate better results for you in the long run. Always make sure you can find an hour a day to fit in time to go for a walk, an exercise, lunch break. The best way to not get stressed out over your work is to do something else. So make sure you at least have 1 hour a day to yourself. Otherwise, it's going to get into your head. And definitely use your vacation for mental health days. It's the best way to keep a healthy mindset. So if you know that you're not going to have vacation for a while with family members or a big event, then probably just schedule a long weekend in your schedule, and that will probably help you out in the long run as well. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Yeah, it was. We do a virtual clap for you. Actually, there's a button here that we can do like clapping. Yay! It was a great talk. I really loved the last part when you went through the actual things they expect and all these notes about what to expect, how to take care of yourself. That was very, very tangible and relatable to the students. So guys, feel free to drop your questions in the chat list or open your mic and ask it if you like. So scientific visualization, are you still busy with that, or that was just like a part of your career path? Are you still like collaborating in scientific visualizations at the moment?
I am. There is something coming up in the future I'm very excited about, but that won't be for, I think, December. So December or November, will be kind of working on something and also releasing something scientific visualization wise. I can't talk about it yet, but I'd love to. But there will be. I still am working on it in the background. I still work on the blog. Currently,
that looks cool.
Yeah.
That currently, looks cool. I love physics and astrophysics. Even now, I sometimes just like watch lots of YouTube videos, and like there's a physics quantum mechanics books next to my bed every now and then. So and like just seeing that a VFX artist can communicate and collaborate with scientists and kind of cast a new light to the science, because what you do is just like gives the scientists a new look. So they've been always looking at these charts and tables and numbers, but now they see it happening in a simulated world. They can be inside of it or look around it. So it's just like a very human, I don't know, it's a new cognitive connection with the knowledge. I love it. Daniela here asks, hey, thank you for your talk. It was very insightful. Would I be able to send you my real? Yeah, actually, that's a question I ask all our guests. Are you? Is it okay if some students want to have your thoughts and ideas on their demo reels?
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to send me any of your demo reels. I don't currently have access to the chat over Teams, so I can't send my emails directly to all of you, but I can definitely, I believe you have my email as well.
Yes, yeah, I have your email, and also through LinkedIn, maybe.
LinkedIn works, yeah. LinkedIn and email
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will share Kate's email with you guys as well. So yes, she's very generous, as you have realized, with knowledge. So Daniela says, and is it okay to not have? Oh, that's another question. Is it okay to not have fully rendered and lit simulations in your demo reel? Is that fine?
I think it's fine if you don't want to go into rendering or lighting. If you're primarily wanting to be a simulations artist, the only thing they're going to be looking at is your simulations. So I would say your lighting and rendering and compositing don't have to be that accurate, unless you really want to head down that path road into those different fields. Because generally, as a VFX artist, you won't be asked to composite
Do
anything.
look development, yeah.
Yeah, you won't be asked to do look dev, and you won't have be asked to composite anything. So I think that's okay.
Any other questions? So I will share Kate's email, as well as once I receive the links to those scientific, which I'm excited about that part too myself. I will share that with you guys. That was a very good collection of all the, you know, I know the Illinois people, but I was not aware of the others, which was great. I will share those links with you guys as well. So when working with animators, so that was also a very interesting part of your talk. So like institutions, companies provide a chance of being in touch with other departments and learn from them. So what is the common language you have with other departments? Is there any like kind of everyone looks at animatic or storyboard or pre-visualizations and just keep talking about it? How this discussion happens? How do you know that like so an animator is animating in a way that your simulations, I don't know, like rolls around that character, and do you get what I mean?
Yeah. So there's two different kind of roads that works. Two different type of pathways I find like companies work on. So in VFX, we usually use something called Shotgun, or now it's called ShotGrid,
Yes.
because Autodesk has been so much fun with us. But we use something called Shotgun to, store notes and production notes on. So usually on Shotgun, you'll get assigned to a shot. And on that shot will be a list of people and their tasks and your tasks. So you can keep track of who's working with you on that shot and who you might have to reach out to regarding animation or anything you need. But usually in the event of something going wrong, or you can't find a resource that you need to complete something, you'll usually reach out to your lead, because he'll be in contact with other members of production, and his job is to basically look out for you and anybody else on his team. So you either research the people you find on Shotgun and you talk to them, or you talk to your lead who finds you the proper resources. And I find that process often happens at larger VFX companies. But if you are working at an animation studio and you're working on an animated picture, I do find their pathway of people talking to each other and working on assets and staying in the loop is a little bit different. So usually you'll be given a folder, maybe on your first day, with all the information you need to know about your show. And in this folder will be the animatics of the episode or episodes you might be working on. So you can kind of get a better idea of how the episode or show progresses. And you'll also have access to, depending on what type of I guess, system they use to kind of look at the different shots that are in your sequences. Same goes for shotgun in that case.
Yeah.
And so you can always have access to the materials of that other people are working on. And you can also take a look at them and make sure everything is correct.
Leave comments, yeah. So we used to use F-Track. It was another solution similar to shotgun, but like in general, there is this platform that you can talk through other departments, leave comments, read their comments, and have discussions going on through, which is mainly online. So they're very helpful at this situation that the world is working from home. So any other questions? Cool. Thank you so much, Kate. It was a very insightful talk. We really enjoyed, and I'm glad that we finished this semester by this fantastic talk you had with us. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, I forgot to turn my camera back on.
Yeah, just wanted to say, but yeah. So thank you so much. And we are looking forward to see more stuff from you as you promised. December is the month we're going to see lots of new things coming. Guys, don't forget to read her fantastic blog, and this talk will be posted on YouTube, and you have a chance to listen to it again and again, especially the last part that talks directly to you who will be graduating in a month. Okay, thank you so much, Kate, and I really appreciate the time.
Me too. It was great to meet you all. I guess congratulations, or early congratulations on graduating, everyone. I'm sure you'll all do great.
They will. They will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your evening.
You too.
Bye.